So I thought we'd just kind of start at the beginning. How did the whole thing start?
Yeah.
Cancer scare.
Yes. So back at my old job, I had a coworker that had recently been diagnosed. And one morning on a whim in the shower, I was like, I'm going to do a self-breast exam. I hadn't done one before. And I felt a lump. So I contacted my family doctor and went in to see her, and she said, we're going to do an ultrasound just to kind of see what this is. So got that done, and I was told I had a benign fibroid adenoma, which is basically just fatty tissue, and that we would follow up a few months later. So in the meantime, I got pregnant, and at my first appointment, when I was told I was pregnant officially, I told them I had recently been told I have this, and is that a concern of anything? More thinking future of breastfeeding.
Right.
And she said no, but it will grow because of hormones during pregnancy, so that's normal. So throughout my pregnancy, that's what was happening, and I felt fine, and nothing was painful, and it was growing like they told me it would, so I really wasn't concerned. But then it continued to grow, and I thought, it seems like it's getting a little big, so I mentioned it at my appointments when I was getting checked out, and they were like, yeah, that's normal. Nobody showed concern. Nobody looked at it. And so fast forward, I had my daughter, healthy little girl, and then about 9 weeks later, I went for a follow-up ultrasound, and they immediately scheduled a biopsy and discovered it was not a benign fibroid adenoma. It was actually stage 3 triple-negative breast cancer.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
is that something that it was that the whole time?
Yes.
They could have figured that out before you were even pregnant?
Yes. So I think what happened was I didn't have or didn't think I had a strong family history of cancer, and because I was 27, they didn't feel the need to do further testing to really make sure that it was what they said it was. And so, yeah, I went through my entire pregnancy having breast cancer, and obviously not knowing. I was very thankful, though, because mine was triple negative. It was not fed by hormones, and so therefore that was probably a saving grace. You find that out after the fact, obviously, because I didn't know different types of breast cancer existed. But you
I don't either, so what is it?
Yeah, so triple negative is it's negative for all the hormones, so it's not fed by them. And so yeah, there's ones that are and there's ones that aren't. And so my type of cancer wasn't driven by hormones, but it tends to be more aggressive, however more treatable. So, yeah.
Okay. Do you remember kind of what you were thinking at that point, when they told you this?
So the crazy part of that is I was scheduled to hear back from the testing center. So I think I got my biopsy done on a Thursday, I want to say, and was called, I think it was a Monday or Tuesday. I remember very clearly. I was downstairs with my daughter, and I heard my phone ring, so I ran upstairs, and I saw that it was my family doctor who ordered the ultrasound, and I wasn't thinking. I'm sleep deprived and not focusing on waiting for my doing new mom things. Yeah. So it was my family doctor, and she said, I'm calling about your results, and I said, oh, I haven't heard from them yet. And there was a silence, and she said, they didn't call you, and I said, no. And again, silence, and she said, you have breast cancer. And I was like, what I said was so stupid, because I remember I was like, are you kidding? Like, I didn't even know what to say. And I'm holding my daughter, and I'm like, okay. And I just remember I said, I have to go. I have to call my husband. So I called him, and all I said to him, and Kat knows my husband, he's very even-keeled, and I said, you need to come home. And he said, okay. And that was it. He didn't ask why, he didn't ask anything. So in the meantime, I put my daughter in her little bouncer, and I remember just like walking circles in my house, just kind of almost screaming, but not even recognizing my own voice, looking at her going, oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? So he got home and kind of jumped right into the mode of, okay, what do we need to do? So he called the doctor, and I just remember just crying and just kind of being in a state of shock. It was like, I remember looking at my daughter going, okay, like, am I going to make it? What do we do? How do we do this? I have no idea. So, yeah, it was, from that point, it was a whirlwind. They called, my husband called the doctor, and they set us up with a surgeon. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, they're just going to take it out. Surgeon does surgery. We're just going to get it out. So I met her, and can't say she was the kindest, most loving woman. So she didn't exactly make me feel comforted, but she started saying, okay, we're going to do chemo. And I was like, wait a minute, what? Chemo? You're a surgeon. Like, why are you telling me this? And probably you need radiation, and then we'll do surgery. And so from that point, I basically just kind of, like, I heard talking, but wasn't really processing. That's why they tell you to always have somebody with you. And so they just set up appointments and tests. And by the time we got home from that appointment, my parents were here, because that was, of course, not the best phone call I had to make. They're 3 hours away. And my in-laws were here, and they were like, okay, so you have to have surgery. I'm like, no, actually, I have to have chemo. And that's like the dreaded word. You hear chemo and you think awful, awful things. And we ended up getting, through my sister-in-law, actually, she's in New York City, and her family had a connection with the chief breast surgeon at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City. And so the next day, the power of connections got me in with the chief breast surgeon, and that's kind of where I chose to get treatment, and where we stayed and figured out what we needed to do. So we stayed in New York. My parents are in New Jersey, so we uprooted everything. Obviously, our house was still here, but my husband was able to work from home, so he worked from my parents' house, and we moved in with my parents. So that was, you know, with a 9-week-old and a cancer diagnosis, and living with your parents after you've established your life is hard, but then the weight of all of it as well. So we thought that was the best option, because I didn't know, I knew I was going to need the support, obviously, and I think it would help them mentally that I was closer, but I needed help with my daughter, so that's what we did. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the treatment process a little bit. What was that like? How long did it take?
Yeah. So because of the size of the tumor, with me, they did chemotherapy first. So I had 4 months of that every 2 weeks. Four were of one drug, and then which was more intense. They called it my cocktail. It was this like blood red medicine, and then I had 4 weeks of another treatment, or four treatments of the other one. So it was a total of 4 months of chemo, and that got it to the size that they were ready to do surgery. So during that time, you have a couple different options in terms of surgery, but I ended up getting the genetic testing, because of my age and being so young, and then also I have a Ashkenazi Jewish background in my family, which tend to be carriers, which I had no idea. I got that testing done, and it did show that I had the gene. They call it the breast cancer gene, BRCA1. So I have a BRCA1 mutation, and so that put me at a greater risk for developing it in the other breast. And so we chose to do a bilateral mastectomy. And then I followed that up with 6 weeks of 5-day-a-week radiation to target that specific area.
So. And that was still all in New York, so the surgery and the radiation.
So the chemo and the surgery were all in New York, and then I did radiation closer to my parents, okay. So about 30 minutes from them. Okay. Yeah.
So how were you feeling during all of the treatment? I'm assuming terrified.
Terrified.
You had the hair loss and all of this.
Yeah. The unknown was very scary. I remember the night before we were going into New York, just being like, you picture what you see in the movies, where I'm going to be laid up on the bathroom floor, I'm going to be sick, I'm going to be bald and miserable and skinny and all of this. And so The unknown was very scary, but the next morning, my husband and my mom and I kind of started documenting. I was like taking pictures. I was really trying to be like, we're going to document it from the beginning, and we're gonna smile, and we're gonna take pictures of everything so that I can look back. And I was doing countdowns and things like that. So, yeah, the first treatment, it went well. I mean, you're there for several hours, kind of hooked up to this medicine, and they started slow because they want to see how you're reacting, and I felt fine, and I was eating, and we were talking, and then we had what should be like an hour-and-a-half drive, sometimes 3, depending on traffic. So after a long day and a long drive, I got home, and of course I was excited to see everybody, and then I got hit with a knock you on the ground nausea. And so my husband, I remember, immediately picked up the phone and called my doctor, and he was like, I think she's just worn out from the ride, like before the next treatment we'll give her anti-nausea meds and things. So that had me down for a little bit, but I bounced back within about 3 days after the first treatment. It was right before Thanksgiving, so I was like, I want to eat Thanksgiving dinner. I want to enjoy that, and I was able to. And then 2 weeks later, when you had your next one, I popped my anti-nausea meds, and I felt a lot better. And it's fatigue. My doctor told me, he said, if you are sick or you get a fever, you're not supposed to have those things. We have medicine to help you. So that was a comfort to know that he's like, it's not like what you see in the movies, or it shouldn't be, rather. So the fatigue was a lot. And then my husband, the day after treatment, would have to give me a shot to help boost my immune system. Neulasta, it's called, and that would give me body pain from like head to toe. So that was very painful. But then after that, it was fatigue. And then with each treatment, you got a little more tired. Maybe it'd take a few more days to bounce back. But you rest, and then the week before you go for your next treatment, you feel good, and then they knock you down again. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine going through this just on a normal basis, but with a newborn as well. Like, that must have been so exhausting.
It was scary. I mean, I say to Ella, because she just recently found out about all this, and we can talk about that if we want, but she was, honestly, at the time, I felt like it made it worse that I had a newborn, but honestly, she was the best medicine for me, because I felt like I couldn't lay around and feel sorry for myself. Like, I had a little one that I needed to take care of, and I was mom number 1, and I didn't want that to be taken away from me. So honestly, having her added to fatigue, and I was a tired, exhausted mom, but it was the best medicine because I was needed.
Is there anything that you would say in particular was the biggest struggle through the whole thing?
The biggest. I mean, one of the hardest things was not knowing. Like, you're going through all of those things, and my treatment was working, but you don't know what the final end is going to be, and you have to stay positive. You can't let that kind of creep into your mind. But I think secondary to that was what I was putting my family through. I mean, I knew it wasn't my fault, but I had to uproot my life here. We had to move in with my parents, and just, I think the stress on everybody, it was hard to not feel guilty. Yeah.
Is there anything that you've learned going through this that, you know, if someone else was going through a similar situation, you know, you could give them advice?
If you have your health and you have the love and the support of your family and friends, that you really don't need much else. It puts all those things into perspective. I mean, not to say I don't get frustrated or, you know, stressed out at times, but when I do go to bed at night, I reflect on that, and I'm like, this is so insignificant. So I think it's helped me with that. I think it's taught me that when it comes to hair or your body, that's not what makes you who you are. Hair is just an accessory, and at the end of the day, so are your boobs. You know, it didn't change who I was as a woman, or I think you worry about that, you know. I think especially as a wife, like, you know, he didn't really sign up for this, and I've changed a bit, but that they don't define who you are. I think you learn that you are a lot stronger than you ever know you are until you're faced with something like that. And I think I've learned really the importance of small gestures. I think it's made me, in a sense, a better friend, a better person when somebody's going through something what seems insignificant, when you put a card in the mail to somebody and say, I hope you're feeling better, I'm thinking of you. Like, it means so much to that person that's getting it. So I think those little things, just to really obviously cherish what you have, and to know that you do have an inner strength, and you will find it and use it. Yeah.
So you went through all the treatment and the surgery.
Yeah.
What was the final outcome? So you're cancer-free now?
I'm cancer-free.
When did you find that out, and what was that like?
So the crazy thing I think about it too was, in my mind, as I went throughout my treatment, I kind of was like, I thought, okay, I've done chemo, I've done surgery, I've done radiation, like, the end result has to be good, right? But I didn't even really think about it. You just kind of go through the motions. And then I remember seeing my surgeon, and we're in her office, and I'm sore and I'm tired. So, like, my mind just wasn't even there on what she was going to say. And she said, we found no evidence of disease. And I was like I said, like, in my head, I wasn't even thinking that was possible, that there would be. I don't know. I just thought, I did it. Like, I'm going to be good, right? So when she said that, I was like, wow, I guess it could have been very different. And she got up and she hugged me, and, like, I was just kind of numb. Like, I was just trying to process all of it, and I'm sore, and she gave me the biggest hug I could possibly. And I was like, did she forget I just had surgery? Like, I'm in pain. That was amazing to hear. So, like, the radiation was kind of just to make sure that they got any possible living cells that were kind of hanging out in that area. But it was amazing. Like, I didn't process right away. Like, I called my mom because she was waiting to hear, and I was like, there's, as they say, no evidence of disease. And I was like, she started freaking out, but I just I couldn't even process it. And then as time went on, obviously, I was like, I did it. Yeah. Like, okay, all right, I'm good. Yeah. It's an amazing feeling because, like I said, you don't know, and I felt very, very blessed. Yeah.
Are there any particular causes or organizations that are cancer related that you support now, or, I mean, is it still kind of a part of your life, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we, a year after everything, I organized a team called, they named it Carissa's Crusaders. It was a Relay for Life team, so it wasn't very specific to just breast cancer. It was all cancers, which, I mean, breast cancer, I think, gets a lot of attention, but there's so many cancers, and so it was kind of important for me in that respect to raise money for every cancer, and that was a really uplifting experience. We raised about $10,000 as a team, and they recognize survivors, but I think almost more importantly, at times they recognize the caregivers. So I don't think you really realize how much of a role they play in all of it, and it's really a celebration. And of course, it's remembering people that didn't overcome, unfortunately. But so we were part of that.
And you said that your daughter just kind of found out about this. Just going back to that, what was did she understand kind of the gravity of the situation, or?
Her eyes have been kind of open to a whole new world because it was brought up in front of her. The person, it was innocent. They didn't realize, and she just looked at me and said, "What?" And so there has been a lot of questions. She knows you guys were coming today, and but yeah, I mean, for a 6-year-old, I think she knows what cancer is, but I just didn't want to instill fear in her. I didn't want her to be worried. But she's asked me, "Are you going to get it again?" And ideally, no. Nobody knows. So it's a whole new world for us to try to navigate. How much do you tell? If she asks a question, we answer it. But I more reflect on the power of like love and prayer and doctors and medicine, and just try to not make it scary, but it's been hard. I don't really, this is new territory. I don't know how to address it. But like I said, we're as honest as we can be if she asks a question. But unfortunately, because I'm a carrier, she will have to get tested at some point, and you know, hopefully the advances in medicine will be amazing and it won't be of a concern, but it is something that still is in the back of my mind when that time comes.
Is it kind of always back there?
It is. I mean, she technically could get tested now, but for us, it would do no good at her age. And then also future children, you wonder, okay, do I have a responsibility? I know I have this. Do we have more children? It's one of those that everybody's going to have their own opinion or their own, you know, what's right for them. But, you know, I'd like to think my parents would have still had me if my dad knew he was a carrier, you know. So, yeah.
Did your parents get tested also?
My dad did because of his background, and he is the carrier. So, and he had a hard time accepting that. Not that you have no control over that, of course. But yeah, so then my sister got tested and she was negative, so we were incredibly thankful for that. And so did my dad's sister. She got tested and she was not a carrier. So I seem to be the only female at this point that knows that they are carrying it. So it seems, I think, a lot of the males, because my mom obviously didn't, my grandmother's direct aunts, nobody... Lucky me, yes.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
All right, so life after cancer, you kind of talked about this beautifully already, but is it something, now that it's in the past a little bit, is it a daily thing anymore? I mean, do you still think about it a lot, or is it just kind of something that happened and...
A lot, no. I can tell you, so I was 6 years cancer-free in April. 5 years obviously being a big deal. And with the type of cancer I had, it tends to come back earlier than later. But also, now because I have the BRCA1, I'm at a greater risk of developing ovarian. So now my ovaries are checked. So is cancer still a part of my life? In a sense, yes, because I have to go for probably more testing than, you know, the average person, just to monitor things. So now they kind of tell me I'm on autopilot. So I go twice a year for ovarian screenings, and then just once a year for the breast. But life after cancer is interesting, and nobody honestly told me about this, and obviously everybody has their own experiences, but for me, you know, my life was uprooted from home. And so I had my husband working from home every day. I had my parents constantly coming home, you know, at the end of every day. When we moved back and you're cancer-free, that's amazing and wonderful. But then my husband goes back to work. I'm away from my family. I'm still taking care of, my daughter was about 1. And I was still just kind of getting back into the groove and being like, okay, now what? And then there's emotions that start coming up, because every ache or every pain or every fever or whatever it might be, your mind, at least my mind, is you're convinced you have bone cancer, you're convinced you have ovarian, you're convinced your headache is a brain tumor. That was me, because I was heightened to every little pain in my body. And so, you know, the doctors are like, you're going to have that. Obviously, if it persists, we need to talk, but you're going to have those normal things. But people can't see those aches and pains, and you don't share those aches and pains. And so I, in a sense, hid a lot of stress and didn't want to share things, because I felt like I've already put people through so much. I don't want to burden them with this. I don't want people to be worried or be like, I don't know, feel bad for me. I just kind of dealt with it, or so I thought I was dealing with it. And I wasn't. And there came a point where I was like, I need just some support, and be like, I'm struggling. I'm struggling. And I felt guilty because I'm like, I've survived this. Like, shouldn't I be like on cloud 9 and life is amazing? And it is, and it was. But I also was finally, I think for the first time, able to really reflect in a sense on what had happened, and when all the noise and the doctor's appointments go away. They're kind of like, see you in 3 months. Well, you're used to seeing them every 2 weeks, and they're doing blood work, and they're checking you and going, okay, everything looks good, you're doing great. And then that goes away, and I felt like my security blanket was gone. And so I don't know if that's normal, but for me, it almost was harder at times, because you had to do it, or I at least kind of dealt with it internally. And didn't have that outward support. So now, a few years out, I mean, I'm in a very good place, and I can deal with headaches, and I can deal with normal body aches a lot more normally. But I mean, it's always going to be, I think, a part of me. But I've definitely, I'm in a good place.